Yeah. Any little command I give like that, he's ready. Now.
He's right beside you too.
He's ready.
Yes.
I want to look at some family of origin issues. Like I said, remember we talked about genetics, making up who you are, and environment also forming who you are. Now, the good thing about that is God's in charge of both. Okay, so, but I want us to look at environmental influences while you're growing up. Because in a way, it occurred to me that this three-part being that we are is in the image of God, who is also an example of a family system. You know, that Trinity is presented to us in the Scriptures in family terms. We have God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit, which I'll substitute in there, God the Mother. Okay, because we're three-part team like God. But what I want us to focus in on is what God intended for this family system that he was about to create. You know, that was his intention all along. He said, let us make man in our image and after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the earth, and let them replenish the earth. So family was in his mind when he created everything. When you read on in Genesis chapter 2, go get my Bible back.
Oh, that would be really
That's
cool.
close enough.
That would be awesome.
Good. Now, Genesis chapter 2, we've got a record here of the first marriage. And it was really kind of neat when you look at it. You know, God, as I just said in the last section, God put Adam to sleep. In the Scriptures, sleep is equivalent to death. So I don't think he just gave Adam a little anesthetic. I think he killed him. Why? What would that represent? In order for Adam to have a helpmate suitable for him, what do you have to do? He had to die. Adam had to die to get his wife. Because God took one half, reconstituted Adam as a male, took the other half, reconstituted as a female, Eve. What that suggests to me is that if you're going to have a healthy relationship, it's going to be not only the fact that God has brought you together, but the man in a marriage situation, the man is going to have to die to get his wife. What are we talking about? He's going to have to die to himself. He's going to have to die to that selfishness. See, God has designed the man as the head of the home. He's designed the man to take initiative and leadership in the home. And if the man is not willing to die, he'll never be able to fulfill that. And the kind of death I'm talking about is not a physical death, obviously. I'm talking about a death to ourselves, a death to our own selfish concerns. Now, when he created Eve, God, brought the woman to the man. Okay, Adam went out chasing around looking for a wife. Okay. God brought the woman to the man. This is probably one of the most serious problems we face today, nationally at least, is the divorce rate and the number of split up homes we have. Okay, that's a direct attack on the family. And that attack is seen, the consequences of that is seen in generational problems. They reveal themselves in various dysfunctions. So, when God brings the woman to the man, however, And they're convinced, both of them are convinced of that, and have what I refer to as spirit oneness. When both individuals, husband and wife, are looking to God to satisfy their needs, their personal needs. That's a spirit oneness. Their connection or their oneness is through God, not through any other means, but through God. And from that can grow a soul oneness in which both partners give themselves 100% to the other partner in terms of love. Now, most marriages, unfortunately, I've been around and tried to help, they play this little game where they keep score. The husband keeps score of how many times he's done good, and how many times his wife has done bad. And the wife keeps score of how many times she's done good, and how many times he's done bad. And they are constantly bickering about their score. The soul oneness eliminates the whole thing. Why? Because you're both required to give 100%. So marriage is not a give and take relationship. And one of the reasons for that, and I don't want to just launch off into a marriage class here, but one of the reasons for that is the fact that marriage is designed by God to reveal himself and his love. Just like the individual, Adam, all individuals and their uniqueness are designed by God to reveal his love. Marriage, therefore, is a what? You know, when the Pharisees came to Jesus and they were hassling him about various issues about marriage and divorce and this, that, and the other, he said, what God has joined together, let not man put asunder. He didn't say whom God has joined together or who God puts together. No, he said what. Marriage is a what. It's God's intention of how he's going to impact this world through that relationship, that particular relationship. So it's very, very important to God. That's one of the reasons why, obviously, it comes under attack constantly, you know, from the spiritual enemies we have. So Adam and Eve, being joined together by God, Adam said, this is now bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. She was called woman, Isha, because she was taken out of man, Hebrew Ish. Hebrew word for man, Ish. Hebrew word for woman, Isha. So he named her, and like he had all other the creatures that God had made, Adam named Eve. Now, I know his situation is a little unique, but what does that mean in terms of us personally in relation to today? God, or Adam actually named Eve. When you name something, there's an ownership involved in it, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You go out and buy a new boat, you go put a name on it. You'll name it. Some people name their cars. Okay. Obviously, we name horses. You know, there's a whole bunch of other stuff we name to designate ownership. Adam was taking ownership of his responsibility in that interaction with Eve. Now, at the end of chapter 2, it says they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not, underline the word not, were not ashamed. They had nothing to hide. Nothing to hide. Totally, completely transparent. I can't tell you the devastation family secrets do. These little family secrets going on, they devastate the family. Because that's about the time you get little coalitions develop. And mom and son be against the other members of the family. And especially when you get a blended family. And what I mean by that is you got, like Angela, when she went to, I think it was grade school, she came home in tears, just crying. We couldn't figure out what it was wrong with her. You know, very concerned, I thought maybe she did bully, or, you know, they were making fun of her, or whatever. Come to find out, the reason she was crying is because she did not have two sets of parents. Every other kid in the class had two sets of parents. She only had one set of parents. So when it came around to Christmas, she only got one gift instead of two. What tears the family up is not so much the aftermath as the beginning. God didn't bring them together in the first place. Didn't put them together in the first place. God didn't even recognize it as marriage. So they're trying to do it on their own, in their own strength, in their own power, and it won't work. See, that's the first and greatest necessity for marriage, is that spirit oneness, in which both partners are drawn from the Father, everything they need. As a matter of fact, if you need, and I was going to run contrary to all romantic songs and all that stuff, I realize, but if you need that other person to be fulfilled, you cannot love them. You can't. Because they've become your God. You gotta have them, no matter what. Now, it makes for good romantic tunes, I understand that. But it's all nonsense. See, that oneness has to start with your oneness with God. That's what's fulfilling and giving you the capability of actually loving your spouse. I can't tell you how many people I've seen fall and leech over the years. You know what I mean? It's a tick on a dog relationship. Right? Only the problem is you got two ticks and no dog. And that really creates a problem. So, as a result of that, animosity builds. Animosity, especially when you start keeping scores, okay, of who let down who and who did what to who. The animosity builds to the point where your relationship is no longer faith-based or loving in nature. Your relationship is fear-based and full of hatred for one another. Now, obviously, you can fake that for a long time. People do. They fake it. I don't really love her, but I'm going to stay together for the kids or whatever. I don't even love him, but I'm going to stay together. I'm going to fake it. I know God hates divorce. I understand that. Because what does the family system, obviously. But I'll tell you something he hates more than divorce. And that's faking a marriage relationship and family relationships that are really falling apart because the two people involved are in denial. They will not look at their issues. They do not have the courage to look at their own issues. They prefer to take pot shots at each other rather than look at their own issues. So, God hates that, so that's the reason he permitted Moses to give a writing of divorce. When that hardness of heart due to hatred gets to such a point, there's no longer, and I've experienced this in all my years of counseling with folks, marriage counseling especially. You know, people are feeling good, everything's going well, they go to the beach, right? They don't come to talk to me. The only time they come to talk to me is when their marriage is falling apart and they're not feeling it, right? I accept that, that's perfectly legitimate, I appreciate that, but when they come to talk to me, what I see are two people hating each other. And they both have their justification for why they are hating each other. And both of them compete for the right to speak out their justification of their hatred for the other person. What a mess. There's no love. Only hatred. So in order to help them, I'm going to have to help them see and understand and accept the reality of their own issues of hatred. And that's tough, because people don't want to look at that. Now, those who are not willing to do that, I don't waste my time on. In fact, my standard, you may have, I don't think anybody in here has been brushed off this way. Let me share with you my standard is to give them an alphabet and tell them, when you read the first 4 chapters, get to how Solomon syndrome developed, call me and we'll get together again. You'd be surprised how many people don't call them. If they're gonna do it, they're gonna do it the first couple of days of the week. If not, I'm not gonna hear from them again until they get their cheeks in the cracks somewhere down the road. But anyhow, the point I'm making here is those 2 people in that marriage relationship are not transparent, they're not open, they're not honest, they've got all kinds of secrets about their feelings of hatred towards each other. Now, that is your standard, typical family today. And it's been that way ever since Adam and Eve sinned in the garden. Unless that sin is dealt with in terms of the radical overhaul of a new person that God makes, it won't work. So I frequently tell them, you don't need to talk to me, you need to get a lawyer. We'll figure it out for yourselves. Because the reality of marriage is it's something that glorifies God. It reveals who God is. The love between 2 people is the love of God that is passed out into the world. The love for their children as well. So Adam and Eve, to begin with, they were in that perfect state. They were actually naked and not ashamed. This is Bible language for they were absolute transparent, no secrets from God or each other. None of us were living happily ever after. Then the smart snake entered. Here comes the smart snake. Now notice, he didn't go to Eve and get her to bitch about Adam. That wasn't his work. No. Or he didn't go to Adam and get him to complain about Eve. No, he didn't attack their relationship between them. Okay. He attacked the vertical relationship between them and God. Because that's where it's going to be destroyed. It's going to be destroyed in the spiritual relationship between the individuals and God. I'm not going to read out here. You work these problems out if you've got that initial relationship, spiritual relationship in place. So, he went to the woman, and I don't know why he chose Eve instead of Adam. I suspect that he knew that, because some people think that smart snake, he was walking upright, so they think he's like the family pet. Okay. And they were used to seeing him do it. I mean, and he must have been able to speak because, if you're walking down the road, some snake stands up and speaks to you. What are you going to do? So it was no big thing that he was talking to her. There's a lot we don't know about that, but this much we know, he talked to her and he questioned the Word of God. He questioned what God had said concerning the tree of knowledge, good and evil. He questioned. And of course, Eve, trying to defend that, could only defend it with her legalistic knowledge. And what I mean by that, she could only remember the rule and Adam's emphasis on that, neither shall you touch it. So she was susceptible at that point. But then she also saw that it was good for food, it could eat. It was the fruit we desired for wisdom. I'm not sure, there may have been a little competition between her and Adam at this point. See now, Adam named all the animals, etc. She saw that it was something that she didn't have, that she needed. In her mind, she needed that fruit. She didn't just want it. She had to have it. That was the intensity of it. And when she ate, as I said in the previous session, nothing happened. Well, God had said, the day you eat thereof, you should surely die. That was the half-lie of the smart snake, by the way. He said, no, you're not going to die when you eat. And he was right, they didn't die physically. She gave it to her husband, and he ate. Now, when he ate, as we studied before, the whole creation changed. Everything changed. All of God's creation changed. It began to groan and travail together and now, until now, in pain. For the first time, their eyes were opened. For the first time in their life, they felt an intense sense of worthlessness. They felt like they were totally, absolutely worthless. And they were ashamed. So they hid themselves. So here we go. Typical emotional roller coaster here. We've got fear hiding themselves in the trees God had made. Isn't that kind of ridiculous? You're going to hide somewhere, don't hide in plain sight, right? They were hiding off in the bushes. God made the bushes. He knew exactly where they were. They can't hide from him. And when he questioned them, we said earlier, Adam threw his life under the bus. The woman you gave me, implying that it's also God's fault, by the way. The woman you gave me. She's the point. Of course, she blamed the smart snake. The snake he made, he beguiled me. When we got to the serpent, I feel a little sorry for him because he ain't got nobody else to point to, do it? But he knew what he was doing. And so at that point, God, and it's kind of unfortunate the way it's put, in this Bible, God cursed the world. Okay, you all understand it. Cursed Adam, cursed Eve, cursed the serpent, cursed the world as a whole. Right? And it sounds like God got mad and spanked them all. Okay. And that doesn't fly with me. That's not God. Okay. Actually, what happened was God let mankind experience the natural consequences of trying to take over, trying to be like God. That's what happened to Satan. Lucifer was the highest archangel and said, I'm going to be like God. When he fell, his whole kingdom. So, from that point on, man was cursed, but God was gracious in revealing the particulars to both man and woman. He told Adam, he said, and from now on, you're going to work like a dog. You're going to earn your food by the sweat of the brow. And there ain't nothing in nature that's going to help you. You're going to have thorns and thistles spring up to war against you. So that curse that came upon Adam was a curse that he himself had to deal with in some fashion or form. And at the time, he had no hope. Then he moved to Eve. And that's where he gave that Brother Ethan Kelly and said, because of what you've done, I'm going to put enmity between your seed and the seed of the serpent. And you might think, well, why would he do that? Because he's going all the way back to the original. God knew where it came from. He wasn't surprised about that. So it was the serpent beguiling the woman, so he put enmity between her seed and his seed. Now, her seed at that moment, at that particular time, included the possibility of the Messiah. Okay, remember, all women look to be the mother of the Messiah. Again, and so, even though it seemed fairly lightweight, it was a lot more intense than what we realized. Because he goes on to say, in sorrow shall you bring forth children. It's not gonna be an easy task. It's not gonna be something that you're gonna rejoice while you're doing it. You're gonna hate every minute while you're doing it. It's gonna hurt. Now, us men, we don't have any concept of it. Bill Cosby tried to teach us that one time when he said, if you wanna know what it feels like, take your upper lip and stretch it over your head. Then you begin to understand what it feels like to give birth. The point is, though, in sorrow shall you bring forth children. The child himself is going to give them heat. Okay? Mom's sorrows, they don't end with just the morning sickness going away. They don't end with postpartum depression going away. They continue on and on and on throughout your whole life. Because your kid's your kid as long as you live, as long as they live. Now, one thing he did promise was the seed of the woman was going to save the day. So we hang on to that. But going back to the curse there, not only concerning children was she cursed, but concerning her husband. He said, your desire shall be unto your husband. That means you're going to want to run the show. You're going to want to tell your husband what to do, when to do it, where to do it, how long to do it, and when to quit doing it. You're going to want to be the boss. You're going to want to be in control. But he shall control you. He shall be over you. You can't. Now, if you think of how many family issues have come about because of marital strife, because of those curses. I mean, we can trace down virtually every dysfunction at the family level to that kind of strife between the two. So what does God do about it? What's the hope here? Yeah, that's a pretty dismal picture, really, when you think about it. So what's the hope here? When you read on, you read that God took two innocent animals, I don't know what they were, maybe sheep, took two innocent animals and killed them, shed their blood. He killed them and took their coats and skins and made clothing for Adam and Eve. God did that. And he put them on Adam and Eve. Now, what would God have to do to dress Adam and Eve at that point? What would he have to do? Because there's something he had to do first before he could dress them. Same thing he does with us. He had to get rid of those fig leaves. See, they were dressed in fig leaves. Like that was going to help hide their nakedness. Fig leaves represent our best efforts to make ourselves acceptable with God. Your best effort to get God to like you. At least bless you, or hopefully not curse you. Those are fig leaves. Before you can accept coats and skins, you've got to get rid of those fig leaves. Because by that time, I'm sure they were drying up, getting scratchy, and you won't wear them on your coats. Anyhow, coats of skin represent the righteousness of Christ that God gives to us freely in our redemption. He clothes us literally with Christ, the righteousness of Christ. So the hope for relations is found in the righteousness of Christ. Now, let's bring it home a little more practical here. Because that means when you look at another person, and I'm using marriage here, but it also go over to other relationships. But you look at another person, you don't see that other person really. You see the manifestation of their flesh, usually. you don't see who God has made them to be. You see how screwed up they are. You see that flesh they still possess. That cloak of righteousness is what God sees in people. It's far different than what we see in people. So we see them as worthless, no good, scum of the earth. God sees them as holy and without blame before him in love. Why? Because that's how he made them. And so here's where the complications can come in. We're gonna fight this all the way through the adversaries. Okay, I'm just kind of setting you up with this right now. Where the complication is gonna come in concerning your identity, who God has made you to be, is in that war that goes on inside of you as to whether you're going to believe that truth or not. That's it. I won't even say believe, because faith is a fruit of the Spirit. I'll say whether you want to believe that's true or not. See, that is the essence of what we can do. So let's put it in a relational context. When I see someone misbehaving, doing something I would never do, acting in a wrong way, potentially harmful to themselves or others, I have a choice to make at that moment. Am I going to identify them with their behavior? Or am I going to identify them with who God said he made them to be? You know, follow me? And it goes especially true for husbands and wives and parents and kids. Okay, you gotta look beyond that fleshly manifestation of their personhood to the real person God has made them to be. The redeemed person that is clothed with coats of skin. Now, to really complicate that, it's also on a developmental schedule. A little baby Christian isn't going to have the same look as a mature Christian. But they're still going to be a Christian. See, there's developmental sequences here that go along as people grow in grace and knowledge, and we can recognize them. More particularly, we'll get into this when we get into Romans chapter 6, but more particularly, we're going to learn, like Paul said, from now on, I'm not going to recognize anybody after the flesh. What does that mean? That means that's not the real person they are. Now, don't think that what he's saying is, I'm just going to be oblivious to people being crazy out there. Okay, that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is, I'm not going to identify them with their flesh. I'm not going to identify them with their sinful behaviors, because that's not the person God made them to be. The person that God made them to be is righteous. As righteous as Christ. A brand new person. You have to come to that point in a relationship. I told you all it's on my phone. You have to come to that point in a relationship. I'm going to call him and invite him to the place. You have to come to that point in a relationship where you are willing to look past the flesh. But that's a big step. Because I don't have to tell you guys, the flesh can be ugly, real ugly. And sometimes it's so ugly that's all you can see, naturally. With my faith, you're going to have to look past that to see that new person that God has made them to be. That can only happen when you see yourself that way. Okay. The sequence, remember I gave you the circles here, Carl Rogers. The sequence is you develop your self-image, your own image, how you see yourself according to the real image that God has made you to be, the real person He's made you to be. As you get closer together, bring those two images closer together, then other people are gonna notice. Other people are gonna begin to see you as who you really are as well. Why? Because if you learn who you are and you understand the role that you play in loving other people are desperate for that. See, other people out there are desperate for what you've got. They want that love, that unconditional love. They want that acceptance. They want that respect. They want that meaning and purpose in their life. They have to have it to live. It's a personal need, like we'll talk about next week. They want it. And so they'll be looking to you in a very short order to teach them that very thing. So as you begin to believe the gospel for yourself, as it grows in you, you're solidified in your identity. You know who you are. You understand the real meaning and purpose of your life. Then other people around you will begin to see that. Now, you're not going to develop business cards and pass them out. They're concerned about that. That's not the way to show identity. Jesus said the only way you're going to show your identity, your true identity, is loving other people like he does. By this shall all men know you are my disciples. And as you grow in grace and are able to love other people like Christ around you, other people are going to know that you are his disciple. And their image is going to conform to your image as well. It's a less complicated way to live, a lot less complicated when you believe the truth about yourself and other people. Because the lies get so convoluted. You can go from one to another, think you're getting out of it and still be stuck. That's the lies that are going on in there concerning our identity. It's so convoluted that we need straightforward truth. And so God said, I made you my beloved child in whom I am well pleased. That means you're just like Jesus. That means what's true of him is true of you. That means you're as loved as Jesus was. You're as accepted as Jesus was. You're as important as Jesus was. Your life has as much meaning as Jesus did. Why? Because you're a member of his body. I'll give you all a little preview. Mary hasn't sent it out yet in the newsletter. There's an article entitled, You Are Christ. It sounds surprising. There are some circles that I get crucified for that statement. And to be honest, it does sound a little crazy. It sounds a little far-fetched, sounds a little off the wall. But the reality of it is, who God has made you to be is Christ. See, Jesus is not just an example for us. Father. Jesus is an example of us. That's what we look like to the Father. So when God looks at you, he sees his son. He sees his righteousness. Now, additional proof that you are Christ is that you are called of God to do the work of Christ. You have the mind of Christ. You have the Spirit of Christ. You are a member of the body of Christ. You're Christ. Just like this little finger right here, it's John Glenn. Right? Now, it's not all of John Glenn. There's much more to John Glenn than this little finger. But it is John Glenn, because if you mess with this little finger, you're going to mess with John Glenn, right? That's the way you're Christ. You are Christ. No, you're not all of Christ, but you're a member of his body. You are Christ. What I've seen over the years is people unable to grasp that, not able to realize who God really made them to be. And they're playing miserable religious games. gone completely off the deep end and total licentiousness, doing whatever it's gonna take to make him feel good. Really does. The only way out is to believe who God said he made us to be. That's the importance of our true identity. And once we begin to want to believe that, everything else begins to unfold. We begin to understand ourselves more clearly because we've accepted what God said about us is true. All right, I'm going to wrap it up for today. Let me stop here. Any questions that you guys had? Any corrections? You know, I can get on a roll, and say something like, there is no God. Anybody hear anything like that? Anybody got any questions? Clear as mud? All right, next week we're going to look at our needs. Our needs according to the three parts. The three-part thing, and therefore we have three sets of needs. Physical needs, personal needs, spiritual needs. We'll find those next week.